Personality. The work aims to weaken personality. This is a disadvantage at first, because one actually feels weak when we can no longer react in the usual manner. Let's say that we are accustomed to constantly flying into a temper, or becoming emotional over something and becoming extremely assertive, then suddenly cannot. This makes us feel weak and disempowered. We feel at a loss. A loss of what? The loss of some small part of personality. At the same time, we gain something, however, and in fact are really stronger. In these commentaries on internal and external considering, we can try to better understand what it means to make personality passive. The object is of course to allow essence to grow and mature. So every time we go up against personality consciously, we gain something. Of course this must not be taken arithmetically, as life is not a debit and credit balance of some checking account. One cannot expect to instantly acquire some exact gain. It is rather more complex and subtle than that. Personality keeps us where we are, keeps us in check, and it is acquired. It has become who we are, or more correctly, we have become it. It does, it acts, it says, it finds fault, it spoils a happy time, it takes charge of us at every moment by forming the side rails. So it keeps us where we are, and our life is whatever it is. Where then are we in all of this? We are where we are in the sense of what we have in us that is active, and so experience what we think we might enjoy. It makes us see life, right there, outside of us, then perhaps desire all sorts of things, but we cannot get into life, and get things from it, save in so far as our personality allows us to. It's the blinkers on the cart horse that draws our wagon, and it gives the horse tunnel vision. We go into life according to the shape of our personality. We encounter life, people and so on, through our personality and not directly. We do not see our personality, and it is not conscious to us. So perhaps we blame life or people, then feel disappointed, let down or left out and so on. The trouble is that we have acquired a certain mechanical device, a prism for making contact with life that is called personality, which renders life for us, exactly in accordance with its shape as it were. And so here we are, always carrying about with us our personality, our apparatus for experiencing life, and always hoping perhaps if we only had a new environment, new people, a new house, new clothes, more money etc. that everything would be utterly different. How can that be? Because we are carrying about our apparatus for contacting life, our personality. We can win the lottery, pack our bags and fill them with new clothes, then go to the Antipodes, but we carry our personality with us, with all of its acquired habits of mind, habits of emotion, habits of behavior, habits of talking, habits of finding fault, habits of movement, habits of health and so on. The work is about how to get away from oneself, not from life. We do not get away from ourselves by changing our outer environment, by purchasing a new outfit. For this reason it is necessary to observe oneself, and see what our personality is like, study it, and see what our apparatus constructed from. We all have all sorts of dreams about a new life, about perfect circumstances, marvelous people, being rich, beautiful or famous etc. But such dreams are idle, because even if we were placed in exceptional and ideal conditions, such as described, to land ourselves in paradise, we would react to everything through our personalities, and very soon be evicted from the garden as quite unsuitable. The trouble really is that none of us knows how to live, because none of us sees that the trouble lies with our own personality, in the receptive reactive mechanisms that we use to contact life. In our filters and buffers that we've built up around essence to protect it, to constrain our inner child. And we shall never learn how to live even a little, if we do not work on personality within us, then see just what it is in us that causes the problem which personality seeks to counter in each case. What troubles arise from within, not merely from others or from life and the universe. All this work is about imitating the conscious circle. However, if we do not work on personality, we remain mechanical, where it will act always in governance, instead of us. The machine will speak. It will get angry. It will take charge of everything. And even if we begin to be aware that there is something else in us, something deeper that does not want to act, to speak, to feel, to think, in the way that we do, then we shall be powerless to alter anything, at least for quite some time. Even so, if we can grasp this, then we are in a far better position than that individual who does not perceive that something is always taking charge of them, then somehow spoiling everything. In the work, we have to realize that we are at the mercy of something called personality in us, and that this is a mechanism that controls everything. We may lie in bed in the morning in a half-sleep state, and see quite clearly what we should say, think, feel, or do. Yet immediately that we get up, something takes charge of us. It takes charge of and it begins to act or speak in a way quite contrary to what we perceived and planned in lucid dreaming. What takes charge of us? It is personality. Then in a short time, in a moment, we are fully under its control, and everything we thought and planned when we were more awake, more free, that is from personality, seems so far away, perhaps even nonsense. Then we behave exactly in the same way as yesterday. Something grips us like a boa constrictor, and we fall asleep in its grip. This is our tragedy, that we cannot change and even forget that we should change for a whole day, or a week, perhaps even longer. Once we are in the grip of this constrictor called personality, everything goes by mechanically. Only once we are in the grip of personality, we do not see it as mechanical. One thing leads to another, through well-trodden paths of association and carefully formed habit, until in the end today becomes just like yesterday and tomorrow as today. Eventually it seems to us to be all logical, all reasonable, all justifiable and all natural. But it's not, and when someone begins to awaken just a little, to be more free from their personality, they experience moments of seeing this mechanicalness to which they are tethered, and under whose power they have become enslaved. They see that they are in a prison. They might even begin to be afraid of this smooth, powerful, self-acting machination, this Frankenstein that insists on controlling them, which life has gradually created inside without their knowledge. Then and only then, can they begin to understand what work on themselves really means, what their task is, and what they must struggle with for the rest of their life. This externally created thing inside of us, this constrictor, fashioned through outer life, the machine or matrix, whatever form it takes, is the dragon that is to be overcome by the brave knight, in the language of mythology. It is the difference between the red pill and the blue pill that Neo is given. In the fourth way, which lies in life, we cannot go into a monastery, or sit in a cave in the desert to free ourselves from personality. Making personality passive is in the way that we are studying, continual work on oneself through life, through means of self-observation, by not identifying with oneself, by inner separation and so on. The whole point of the work is about this outcome. P.D. Ouspensky narrated how it was explained to him that an individual must gradually learn to take photographs of themselves as a whole, and not simply observe single details which might be pleasing. They must begin to see themselves altogether, in all centers, at any particular moment and in all times. For this purpose, it was said, one must learn to take mental photographs of themselves in different moments of their life, in different emotional states, and not photographs merely of details, but photographs of the whole, as they saw it. In other words, these photographs must contain simultaneously everything that a person can see in themselves at a given moment, their emotions, their moods, thoughts, sensations, postures, behavior, movements, their tones of voice, facial expressions, intonations, and so on. If someone succeeds in seizing interesting moments for taking these selfies, then they will collect a whole folder of portraits which, taken together, will show quite clearly what they really are. However, it is not that easy to take these snapshots at the most interesting and characteristic moments. It takes time to learn how to do this. But if the images are successfully recorded, and if there are a sufficient number of them, an individual begins to see that their usual concept of themselves, the one with which they have lived from year to year, is very far from reality. Instead of the person they have supposed themselves to be, they will see quite another individual. This other person is the self, but at the same time it is not. In the work, we must learn to know the real from the invented, then later to separate them. To begin self-observation and self-study, it is necessary to divide oneself into a real, and an invented or an acquired side. Someone must realize that they indeed consist of two individuals. Of course all this takes time, but as long as a person takes themselves as one individual, they will never move from where they are. Their work on themselves starts from the moment they begin to feel two people within them. One is passive, and the most it can do at first is to register or observe what is happening to it. The other, which calls itself I, is active and speaks of itself in the first person, but it is in reality only an invented and an unreal thing. Let's label this invented personality in us, A. When someone understands their helplessness in the face of A, their attitude towards themselves and towards A in them ceases to be either indifferent or unconcerned. Self-observation now becomes the observation of A. The person begins to understand that they are really not A, that A is nothing but the mask that they wear, the part that they unconsciously play and which unfortunately they cannot stop playing, a part which rules them, then makes them do and say 1,000 stupid things, 1,000 things which they would never do or say themselves. If they are sincere with themselves, they will then feel that they are in the power of A, and at the same time they feel, most importantly, that they are not A. They begin to be afraid of A, they begin to feel that A is their opponent. No matter what they would like to do, everything is altered and intercepted by A, and A is their greatest adversary. A's desires, tastes, sympathies, thoughts and opinions are either opposed to their own views, feelings and moods, or they have nothing in common with them. But at the same time, A is the master and they are the slave, possessing no will of their own. They have no means of expressing their desires because whatever they would like to do or say, it is done for them by A. When a person has reached this level of self-observation, they must understand that their whole aim must now be to free themselves from A. And since they cannot in fact free themselves from A, because it is the self, they must therefore become the master of A, then do, not what the A of any given moment wants, but what they themselves want to do. From being the master, A must become the servant. The first stage of work on oneself therefore consists in separating oneself from A mentally, and then later in being separated from them in actual fact, in keeping apart from A. But the fact must be borne in mind, that our whole attention must be concentrated upon A, for a person is unable to explain what they themselves really are. However, they can explain A to themselves, and it is with this that we must begin, remembering at the same time that we are not A. Notice that in the previous statement it is emphasized that a person cannot change as long as they take themselves as one. But when they divide themselves into an observing side and an observed side, the first step towards possible change has been taken. Namely, a person must become observing I, and then personality become the observed. Everything that we can observe in ourselves must be taken as A to begin with, as our personality. People assume that only one thing acts in us, but as long as everyone takes themselves as one, they cannot think otherwise, so they find the idea of self-observation very difficult. What should we observe, they ask? The answer is, everything, to begin with. But, they will say, whatever I can observe is surely myself. The answer to that is both yes and no, in the sense of this work. All that we observe, we must take at first as personality in us. This personality governs us all, and the part which can observe it is helpless in face of that at first. The order of things is wrong. The command is in the wrong place. The inner cannot control the outer. What should command is subject, and what should be subject commands. The inner part which observes, sees the outer part calling itself I, and so acting in its name and can do nothing about this at first. Notice here that the part which observes is always deeper than the part observed, that the inner can observe the outer, but not vice versa. Although the inner, or observing side is helpless at first, it becomes strengthened by the ideas of the work which feed it. The inner can only become stronger through the work. Life cannot feed it. A person then begins to wish to break free from personality, from A, from the machine that they are in the power of and subject to. The neutralizing force of life keeps this personality active, then the neutralizing force of the work nourishes the inner observing side. The person begins to understand that their whole aim is to free themselves from A, and to struggle with personality. Since we cannot in fact free ourselves from A because it is ourself, we must therefore master A, and make A do, not what the A of the given moment wants, but what we ourselves desire to do. From being master, A must become servant.